Yes, so my part we will stay in the iron and steel industry, and I will take you through a bit what we have learned so far in more concrete, what brings value when it comes to DPP for iron and steel industry, and where is how could you go ahead practically implementing digital product passport and digital product data exchange, so to say. Starting off, I'm Victor. I started Chaintraced together with a few colleagues 2019. Our ambition has been since start to support this industry with product data exchange and all the values that brings to the market. So I believe, and basically what we realize is the data we have exchanged in 2019 when digital product passport was not even a thing is basically becoming the digital product passport, which I think is a very good sign. Both that we have been listening to the market and also that the Commission has been listening to the market, what it does bring value to this value chain. So we work mainly with from the steel makers up to bigger OEMs buying a lot of steel components. So that's kind of the market and where we're learned what brings value when it comes to product data exchange. In the beginning of this year, we got an assignment from the Joint Research Center. They had put down an 82-page content proposal for iron and steel. That could be the content proposal for the delegated act. They asked us, can you please check with the market if they're ready for this? And also, could you please see if there is anything we're missing that actually brings value for the market? So that is what I want to take you through first part of the presentation, what we realized during that study, where we spoke with about 40 companies covering about 80-90% of the steel flow in Europe. So it's a good representation, I think. And what we realized to start with is that most of the data that was part of the proposal is already exchanged to some extent. You have the mill test certificate, which is what also Johan addressed, is not part of the original proposal for DPP. It's been more sustainability practice. But when we also read ambition with DPP is that the DPP should be the data carrier for product data. Then obviously, mill test certificate has been exchanged since the 90s. It's just in PDF format. So of course, this is a very important product data for the industry. It's not directly connected to sustainability data, but it's still important. Material compliance declaration is already exchanged, usually on more generic levels today, either company statements or more product group statements. Product carbon footprint is already exchanged. It's becoming hygiene for steelmakers to have that available since it's such a big driver, even though we see it's exchanged in different formats for different industries. Automotive is usually more into ISO 14067 and PCF. Construction is more into EPDs, and the rest is in between somewhere. Recycled content we see is exchanged sometimes, but it's not as mature as the rest of them. So there's something coming up with it, but it's not really clear on how to do it and at what levels. So that's kind of the baseline where the industry is today. And then looking at the drivers for digital product passport, what is the opportunity for the companies that will be affected by the passport? I think it's two main opportunities. One is to streamline already existing data exchange. This industry and all the other industries have been doing patchworking the last decades, I would say, in different Excel formats on how to collect data needed to comply with different regulations and different demands. So if the DPP could be seen as the data carrier to harmonize all the data exchange, there's huge opportunities, mainly when it comes to saving cost is one thing. And of course, improving quality of what is actually exchanged. But also we're in an age of AI and data is becoming more and more available. So unlocking that data in those PDF files, etc., can of course bring many values to the companies. The second opportunity, which I think is more the original thoughts about DPP, is to unlock the decarbonization business case, basically. Environmental performance need to be comparable to a better extent in order to, both enforce taxes, so to say, and of course, in order to trust the data and compare supplier equally to make sure that the product carbon footprint becomes a natural part of the purchase decision, basically. So those are the main two opportunities we've seen in this market. And then with that, we basically have realized that there is because there's also a big discussion now on granularities. What should be the unique product identifier? Should it be on heat level, lot level, or product level? And what we realized is that some part of the data is in the current proposal more on product level. Basically, all the mandatory data proposed today is at product level or higher usually. So material compliance, environmental performance, and recycled content. Where more of the voluntary data is at heat, lot, or item level, which is the mill test certificate and the country of origin. So basically, looking at the proposal, and this is published as well, so I can provide links afterwards where you find the reports. They're quite heavy, so I could recommend a certain table to view the summary. But just taking through part by part. So one is the product identifiers. So here is basically as several already mentioned during today, so I won't deep dive into this. You need to have some kind of identifier, data carrier, and that's been discussed throughout the day. What I could remark is that it's being discussed what should be the lowest level of granularity for iron and steel. Then is it heat number or should it be product level? So that's being discussed. Producer identification origin, I think there's nothing strange here. What I think is good for the industry is that we can simplify how to communicate country of origin and melt and pour, for example, which is more and more important today with more and more trade compliance requirements. Substance of concern basically also been exchanged already since long in the industry. So same here is mainly as an opportunity to streamline how this data is exchanged. What I could remark is that it's also including substance of concern, not only substance of very high concern, which means it also includes substances that it is not a threat for human or environment, but they are hard to recycle. So those will also be included. That is not usually exchanged in the industry. And then you have the environmental performance, which I think is the most, the biggest and the most important topic of the DPP for iron and steel, where it's very much discussed now. They are looking into new methodology. As mentioned, it's to build on CBAM, ESPR, and also aligned with CPR is what we have got information on. So we are not directly involved in that work stream. We just informed that this is driven on the side. And then you have the voluntary field, which is basically the mill test certificate and that kind of data, and declaration of performance, for example, if you're in a construction industry, and of course all the alignment to CPR that is mandatory in the construction industry. So that's, yeah. So basically what we realize is nothing is strange in the content proposal. Say it's where everything just makes sense, and it's to a very large extent just supporting the industry and streamlining data exchange and making data more comparable. So I think the business case is very strong. I think that is also the reason why already companies like Johan mentioned, SSAB, they've already started. It's fairly risk-free to start. The worst thing if it doesn't happen in the DPP is that you save time or you have increased customer value. So there's basically no risk to start as we see it. Looking at what's happening is that we don't have a confirmed date on when the delegated act for iron and steel will be implemented. It's indicated Q3, Q4 sometime this year. Transition period 18 months at least, probably. But I think it's just looking at the industry adoption in general. We see the kind of data exchange has already been implemented, for throughout the industry, and it's more the early movers and the pilots acting now. I think we will see this kind of data exchange. Of course, once the delegated act will be decided, there will be a broad implementation, and also meaning that if you're buying these kind of products, you will have a lot of data becoming available for you from your suppliers. I think this is a great opportunity for the early movers after the iron and steel in the further downstream, that a lot of data will be served if you put it like that. But it's not, so there's a lot of opportunities in that data coming forward. And the products, these are the products proposed as of now to start with. So if you're putting these products on the market, you're required to add digital product passports What is being discussed as well is what will be the requirement of the downstream users. If you have X amount of percent of this product in your product, are you then required to bring forward data to the next step in the value chain and so on. This is being discussed, and a few different scenarios is evaluated. But no matter how it will be required, I think is the biggest opportunity for a buyer of these kind of products is to understand the value you get from that data. So this is just to exemplify, and it will be a transition because DPP will be implemented in different materials at different stage in time. So we will be living under a transition period for a long time. I think everyone that is not directly affected by DPP should still grasp the opportunity to use the data. And what we see is basically this is just one example. What we see mainly when it comes to steel and companies buying steel data, they are mostly using today from the DPP in steel. So in this supplier, it could be SSAB or any other steel maker putting a DPP on the market. What we see already today is that product carbon footprint is being established as hygiene in the industry. So that of course will be a direct benefit to get the comparable product carbon footprint. Then they just need to build that into their model to and add their footprint on top of the DPP in order to provide that to the customer next step. Same with mills as certificate. It's been established since the 90s basically. The hard part with this has been to harmonize the data from the steel makers. So if this will be part of the voluntary field and standardized, it's a huge opportunity because now basically all the steel makers have different formats, digital formats of mill test certificates. So it's very hard for the companies buying steel to actually streamline their process with the mill test certificates. So this is a huge opportunity as well. I think that those are the two most established workflows, I think. The rest of it, material compliance and recycled content as well is important, but this is what we have seen as the most pressing opportunities that will be made available for everyone buying steel quite shortly. Now this question how to start, and what we typically discuss is just, which I think also as I say we gave good proof on, just start with something and talk with your customers and understand what is bringing value to DPP. Don't focus. Of course, now when technical standards is becoming available, of course you should learn and understand how to publish DPP. But I don't think that is the most important part. The most important part is to understand what brings value to the customer, promoting the value to the customer, and starting to define your DPP. So typically what we see is a good approach to start is, of course, identifying who should be part of this in the organization to make sure that you have everyone in the organization part of such a pilot or defining how to do DPP. And we usually recommend start with them. Now, sorry, it says Chaintraced. This is not a sales meeting, but set up a demonstrator anywhere, kind of, and understand how should you what brings value for DP. It's also much easier to bring that if you have a discussion with the customer, to bring up an example prototype. It could be a sketch or something to discuss with the customer what is actually DPP for us and what brings value from that. When doing that, you very quickly realize exactly where you have the gaps in order to actually do a DPP in full scale. You will identify where you have data gaps. You don't have might have data gaps in the product carbon footprint, or if material compliance or anywhere else. You will also realize, once doing it manually, you will realize how should you actually automate that, because you won't be able to do DPPs manually probably. So you want to automate it with APIs and integrations. So then you have a very clear picture on what kind of APIs you need to build in order to create this. So with that, you have a very good foundation on actually doing a concrete business case. What value does it bring us? What is the effort and what is the cost? And then we recommend step-by-step implementation, not depending on the company, but usually I think you can start with if you have mature data in some areas, start with that and then add on data as the market matures. I think the most important part is getting data out to the customer and engage with the customer, and then iterate and build together with the market. So that's typically how we see good implementations, and that gets done very quickly. Just an example of what could a DPP look like when it comes to iron and steel. So this is just an example, just to exemplify the value of exchanging this data. So in this case, it's basically a digital mill test certificate and the product carbon footprint attached to every transaction of a mill test certificate, every lot. So what we've seen already with this is that this has brought very much value. Looking at the quality data, you can basically remove a lot of manual inspections of products. You can improve your production processes by looking at the data and optimizing it batch by batch. You can, of course, you will avoid this yearly data collections of product carbon footprint, since you will always be pushed and served the latest data of the product carbon footprint. So it's a lot of administration is disappearing, and it will be more dynamic, so it will be quicker see the improvements in PCF. We also seen that with the mill test certificate, you have the material composition, so you have all the materials, so you can then identify if there is any substance of area concern in that already. So all of this we've seen is saving costs and bring a lot of values today, no matter if the DPP will be a reality or not. I think the approach now is for the companies having the business value orientation is totally right, and I think this would be amazing for the market. Thank you.